Alright, what is up, my entertainment junkies? And we are back with another reaction. This time M&J TV. I love this channel. And we're gonna listen to him explain type matchups, see if I can't put my 2 cents into it. And I'm also probably gonna talk before he explains it.
Have you ever struggled to remember Pokemon type matchups?
All the time.
Sure, obvious.
Especially with Steel, because it was weak to Ghost and Dark. I mean, it was resistant to Ghost and Dark, and then it wasn't, and then some type matchups change, and then they add Fairy to confuse everybody.
But why is Dark weak to Bug? Why does Poison resist fighting? Some of them just don't make sense. Thankfully, I am here to help. Today I'll be explaining the logic behind every type matchup in the game.
I forgot how complicated this type match.
Except the ones where logic fails, in which case I'll give you some other ways to remember them. Let's start with just weaknesses, since they're the most important and straightforward. Then I'll do immunities, and finally, resistances. Which I'll tell you now is going to be kind of rough. First is Bug type. Associated.
Alright, their weaknesses. Flying, because birds eat flying is associated with birds. And we don't have a bird type, even though we were supposed to have a bird type. So, flying is pretty much birds. Birds eat bugs. Fire, because you see a spider, you want to set it on fire. Bugs can't really stand flames that much. What is rock? Because rocks can easily crush bugs. I feel like there's one I'm missing.
With, you guessed it, bugs.
Oh yeah, but
fire, rock, and flying.
Yeah, there it goes.
Fire burns bugs. Think of the magnifying glass burning ants thing.
Oh well, there's
Rocks
another one.
Can crush bugs, arguably more effectively than a shoe. And for flying, many birds eat bugs. Important note: flying is weird. It's associated with actual birds, the simple act of flying, and elemental air. So it's going to have a large variety of justifications.
Oh yeah.
Next is dark, associated not
Darkness.
Not only with literal darkness, but also cruelty and
Because, okay, in Japan, let's think about it that way, because it's known as the evil type. It is weak to... Why is it weak to bug? I mean, fighting because the hero always trains and fights evil. Because darkness, finding you are disciplined, and darkness is just you calming your nerves around the unknown, and dark and evil and literally fear. Why is it weak to bug? I guess a lot of bugs are nocturnal.
Handed tactics. It's actually called the evil type in Japan. Dark is
I mean, I guess bugs are also evil.
And fairy, and all three of
oh yeah,
be
fairy. Well, fairy. We are not getting into the fae, because this will make no sense if we get into the Celtic faes and shit like that, because those motherfuckers are fucking evil. I will say it always, fairy type is evil. But because the fairy is always on the side of good, that eventually wins against dark, yada yada.
One phrase: good beats evil. Fighting is associated with honorable, fair combat, and fairy is associated with joy, love, and healing. Both are clear good guy types. But what about bug? I don't know about you, but my reaction is no, bugs are the bad guys. Well, this is actually explained by cultural differences between the West and the East. In Japan, insect collecting and battling is extremely popular, especially with rhinoceros and stag beetles. It's kind of what inspired all of Pokemon.
And Lucky, well, that'd be China, but Lucky Cricket
compared to the West. So a stag beetle isn't some gross, disgusting bug. It's an honorable combatant, and thus good versus evil. To frame it in a Western point of view, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man
beats the bad guys, Bug beats Dark. Next is Dragon, associated with not only...
I don't understand why dragons weak to ice. They live up in the mountains where it's cold. I guess its thing is if you freeze its wings, it can't fly, but Well, I guess they are lizards too, which means they'd be cold-blooded. Which then why would they live out in the mountains? This is just gonna be me wondering about a bunch of shit half this video. But I guess dragons would be lizards and be cold-blooded, so they'd be less active or inactive in cold weather. Dragons are weak to dragons because the main thing that can beat another dragon is another dragon, and then fairies are weak to dragon because fairy tale logic.
Its namesake, but arcane ancient magic, and also just reptiles. Dragon is weak to itself, ice, and fairy. Dragon because of the idea that only a dragon is strong enough to beat a dragon. Ice because reptiles are cold-blooded and thus most are not well suited for the cold. And fairy because of the whole good versus evil thing I mentioned earlier. Pure-hearted magic slaying the vicious dragon. Next is electric, which is only weak to ground.
Do we really have to go over this? Anytime you run anything electrical, you have to ground it. Because ground will nullify the electricity and stop it from freaking sparking up.
Seriously simplifying here, but in electrical engineering, the ground for a circuit is the place where, in case of emergency, the electrical current can flow into and be harmlessly absorbed.
Not emergency, it's actually required. So, for electricity to run safely, it has to have a power source, a load, and a ground. That's why if you just connect two sides of a battery with a wire, it will eventually overheat, catch fire, because all that energy is just going around and around and around, and there's nothing to absorb it, which would be the load. And then if you just keep it going around, it would still heat, because that's more electricity going into the back into the battery or the electrical source. And I'm not really sure why you can't have a complete circuit of no ground, but I do know you have to have a ground. Don't know the specifics, but yeah, you need a source, a load, and a ground, so it's not even just safety.
And it's usually literally into the dirt. Next is fairy, which is weak to poison and steel. As I mentioned earlier, fairies
I guess poison would be with dryads, where they're a part of nature, so poison would destroy nature, and then what's a fairy gonna do to a sword?
associated with healing and health, and poison is, well, the opposite of that. And it's weak to steel because in many mythologies, supernatural beings, including fairies, were weak to iron. Fighting is next, associated with martial arts and honor.
Weak to flying because how are you gonna hit something in the air? Weak to psychic. I guess mind over matter and that bullshit. And how are you gonna touch me if I can just fight you with my mind?
Hand-to-hand
Pen is mightier than the sword.
Weak to flying, fairy, and psychic.
Oh, fairy.
Flying.
I think they should be neutral. Oh yeah, you do have to remember that some of these have weaknesses because balancing the type chart. So not all of them are gonna make sense. I guess magic versus them. Actually, yeah, that's actually probably a perfect thing because magic versus a fighter. My reason is Gardevoir. Gardevoir is not meant to be a female. It's actually meant to be a male. It's supposed to be a magical knight. As seen by, if you ever played the original Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Wally has a male Gardevoir. And which is weird because Curlia has a tutu and but yeah, it's supposed to be a magical knight, and then they pretty much saw that people feminized it, so they made Goulet as a male counterpart to be an actual magical knight, and then Gardevoir's a magical girl, I guess. But then they eventually got fairy, and then she got, Gardevoir got fairy type. And then Iron Valiant's a fairy.
Ability of a bird trumps a ground-bound fighter, and also strong winds would shut down any amount of Taekwondo. Fairy works because it is heavily associated with magic, and even the world's best karate master is a muggle. Psychic also has magic associations, but there's another reason it hates fighting. The game developers chose brains over brawn. Because of course they did. They're game developers. They're freaking nerds.
Got him.
Not dwell on the fact that my entire life is centered around Pokemon. Next is fire type, which is nice and simple.
Alright. Rock and ground, because you can throw dirt on a fire to put it out. Water, you can throw water on a fire and put it out.
Fire is weak to water, ground, and rock, because water and earth are used to put out fires, or at least stop their spread. Next up is flying, weak to rock, ice, and electric.
Okay, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Cold weather. Birds migrate north for the south for the summer, winter, some shit. And electricity because of lightning strikes.
Rock because you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Got it.
Because when it forms on wings, living or artificial, it harms the ability to fly.
Yeah, that works too.
And electric because...
What's this video?
With its namesake and...
Alright, Ghost is weak to Ghost because Ghost affect because Ghost can attack Ghost. It's weak to Dark because they live in the dark. That's all Ghost is weak to, right?
Yeah. Just like regrets, like soul stealing and stuff. I don't know. It feels like a lot of times it just overlaps with Dark. Ghost is actually weak to Dark since spirits can be consumed by vengeance and turn into cruel husks.
Yeah,
as
that
opposed
works
to
too.
Just being like, I don't know, Casper. Ghost is also weak to itself since ghosts pretty famously phase through things except each other. Ha-ha! It is I, Galentium boy. Oh no.
Wait. How old is this video? 7 days. Okay, 7 days ago. Huh. Fuck.
Nearly snapped. I won't go down easy. Oh, put that down. The hammer isn't for you. It's on theme. So by now you know about the epic RPG full of 800 awesome champions you can collect, then use to fight your way through thrilling battles. Both through the story and against other players. Of course, Raid Shadow Legends is the sponsor of today's video, but what does that have to do with the hammer? The Asgard Divide! From now until November 22nd, you can collect Norse mythological champions Loki the Deceiver, Odin Faefather, Freya Fateweaver, and of course, Thor Fae Hammer. Oh, I see now. His hammer's way better, though. I know. Gosh, just be nice. Logging in for 7 days between now and October 23rd will earn you Legendary Loki, plus there's more goodies for 7 days after that. I'm really excited. I love the game, so collecting these Norse champions is going to be so fun. Click the link below or scan the QR code to download Raid and get bonuses available only through my link, such as Epic Champion Anax immediately, then Epic Champ Fane after you hit level 15. Also, you can find me in-game under the name MNJTV and join my clan, Team Sky-MNJTV. But it looks like we're wrapped up now, so go ahead and get out of here with your silly little hammer. You know what? That's it!
Grunty boy, use Thunderbolt!
Ow! Serves you right. Ta-ta! Grass.
Alright, as I have said, I will skip the ad on old videos and promotion whatever shit on old videos, but new videos I'm gonna play it through. Grass, fire, nature, wildfires, flying. I guess storms can blow over trees and shit. Bugs eat grass. I think those are only 3 weaknesses.
This type is next, which should really be called the plants type, because it covers so much more than just what grows in your backyard. It has a lot of weaknesses. Flying, poison, bug...
Oh, poison, freaking pesticide, weedicide. Why isn't bug weak to poison? Herbicide, not weed. pesticide, but herbicide.
Fire and ice, all of which are pretty
Ice.
straightforward things
I forgot 2 of them. Okay, ice, cold weather kills plants. Easy.
that kill plants. For flying, not only do many birds eat seeds, but strong winds can definitely wreck trees. Poison works because of weed killer and other plant-based diseases, and bug is in a similar vein.
Herbicide.
Certain bugs can destroy plants completely.
Oh, yeah.
Bark beetles killed tons and tons of trees in Colorado, which allowed the East troublesome wildfire to spread so easily. Speaking of that, in case it somehow wasn't clear, that's why fire is good against grass. You know, the whole wildfire thing. Then finally, ice. You have to cover your flower beds before a deep freeze, but ice can even kill large trees. Last year, freezing rain accumulated on my trees so thickly that massive branches snapped clean in half. My trees survived, but some people's did not. Well, the work it was to saw off the dead branches and clean them up and stuff. You can bet I'm not forgetting this matchup anytime soon. Next is ground. Associate...
Water, erosion. Why is ground and rock type 2 different things? Either way, water, erosion, mudslide, shit like that. Grass, plants dig their roots in ground. Water, grass. What? I feel like I'm missing one.
With earth that is not as hard as stone. It's weak to water, grass, and ice.
Oh,
Water and
ice.
relate to erosion. The process of
I guess
removing
erosion
earth
works
and
on ice.
relocating it. Rainfall and waterways cover the water type, while glacial erosion covers ice. Wind erosion is also a thing, though, but I guess it's slower? Maybe? So I guess that's why flying's just, like, neutral? As for grass, plants are actually used to counter erosion, but they're strong against ground for another reason. Sapping all the nutrients from it. If
Oh, yeah, that
farmers
works
don't use
too.
crop rotation,
Absorb.
switching up the crops grown on a certain piece of land year over year, the plants will sap all of the nutrients out from the soil, leaving the land barren and infertile. Next is ice, and while it is associated with coldness and snow, its weaknesses can all be explained by what would happen to a block of ice.
Oh yeah, ice weaknesses. Rocks, because you can smash ice with rock. Fire, you can melt it. Rock, fire. Fighting, you can break it with... They break bricks with their fists. Why can't they break ice, even though ice can be arguably thicker and harder? I think that's it. No, there's like a shit ton of weaknesses ice has. What am I forgetting?
It's weak to rock and steel because both are harder
Oh, steel
than ice,
too.
and thus would break the block.
Same
It's
thing
weak
for
to
rock.
fire because fire would melt the
Fire
block.
bad.
Finally, fighting. A master martial artist could shatter the block. That being said, I do not recommend punching ice. It will hurt.
Don't listen to him. Punch ice. Punch ice. Punch a hole into ice. You can do it. I believe in you. Send me a picture of the broken hand on Twitter.
Next is normal, associated with essentially just regular animals, and by extension, regular people. It is only weak to fighting, since a regular person can absolutely lose a fight to a professional MMA fighter. Next is poison associated with venom, disease.
Alright, psychic, mind over matter, and you can give somebody a sugar pill saying it's a cure-all for whatever they're having, and a lot of times it would work, or at least make them feel better, so placebo effect. Psychic, ground, you can't really you can dilute poison with minerals. That's only 2 weaknesses poison has, right?
Pollution. It is weak to psychic and ground.
Okay, yeah, that's only 2.
Because of the association with the mind, and your mental and physical health are linked, so a strong mind can sometimes fight off illness. On the flip side, you're more likely to get physically sick if your mental health is bad.
Oh yeah, you can also, what's the word? Hypochondriacs. You can think that you're so sick so bad that you actually start feeling sick.
So, go to therapy. As for the matchup with ground, this is actually the first matchup in the video that I don't think makes sense. A big problem with pollution is that the toxins seep through the ground and contaminate groundwater, prevent plants from growing, and have other harmful effects. In short, ground doesn't really stop.
Like I said, ground has minerals in it, which you take to boost your immune system and stuff, make you healthier and not be
poison.
that bad.
So instead, Just remember the
And diluting it.
age-old wisdom. If you get a cut and want to prevent infection, just rub some dirt in it. Don't actually do that.
No.
That
It might actually work.
Next is Psychic, focusing on the mind and...
Alright. Dark, Bug, Ghost. 3 common fears. People are afraid of dark. It's also evil type in Japan. People are afraid of evil. That will affect your mental state. Bugs. Creepy crawlies. A lot of people are afraid of them. So, it will affect your mental state. And ghosts. Everybody's afraid. Almost everybody's afraid of ghosts. Even in the anime, which is weird because they know that ghost types exist, which is... I don't know, man. Anime's weird. But yeah, 3 common fears.
Powers like telekinesis. It is weak to bug, ghost, and dark, and all 3 have the same explanation. Fear. Bugs, ghosts, and the dark are common human fears, and fear is the mind killer. Next is rock, which is surprise about...
Rock, ground. Okay, rock is weak to ground because, I don't really know about that one. I guess, like I said, why is rock and ground 2 different things? Grass, the same reason. Steel, because steel can break a rock. Fighting, because martial artists break rocks. Water, because of erosion. They're not weak to ice, though.
Rocks. It is weak to grass, water, ground, fighting, and steel. Grass and water are here because of weathering and erosion. Plant roots crack rocks apart, and as mentioned for ground, rainfall and waterways erode rocks away. Again, I guess wind erosion is just too slow. The matchup with ground is a bit odd, but I'd say it's best explained by earthquakes shattering rock features.
I guess that
Fighting
makes
is here
sense.
because of martial artists breaking stone. Again, do not try this at home.
Nope, do it.
Steel because metal is harder than stone. Pickaxes, drills, jackhammers, etc. Next is the steel type, associated with all...
Alright, ground, I guess I'll go with the earthquake situation, and it breaks skyscrapers apart, which are made out of steel. Weirdly enough, fighting. I don't think there's a martial artist who can break metal in half. Fire, because fire is used to melt and mold metal. Ground, fire, fighting. I think that's it.
Metal, but mainly iron. It is weak to fire, ground, and fighting.
Yep.
Fire because extreme heat can melt metal. Ground because metal tools will be worn down and dulled by use in the dirt.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
fighting because a martial artist could punch through metal. Man, they're putting a lot of faith in a guy who took some karate classes at the Y. Maybe we need to specify that the fighting type isn't just about combat prowess. It's about that, but also, like, extreme physical strength. So, like, All Might. Okay.
I am here!
Fighting types like All Might. Then the ice, rock, and steel matchups make more sense. Finally, for the weaknesses section is water. It's weak to
Grass, electricity. Grass absorb water, plants absorb water, electricity. I hate that. Common misconception is that water conducts electricity, even though if you have 100% purified water, it does not conduct at all. It's the minerals inside the water that conduct it, but basically every place you get water that is not in a science lab is going to have minerals in it, so it's going to conduct electricity.
Grass because plants suck up water with their roots and use it to grow, and electric because water conducts electricity. Okay, technically, pure H2O does not conduct electricity. It's the minerals mixed in with the water that are doing it. But, like, you're never gonna find pure distilled water in nature. Almost all real bodies of water conduct electricity. If you shock a pond, the fish in it are gonna die. And the water isn't just water, it's aquatic creatures too. Now let's do immunities. Dark is immune to psychic. Think about...
There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Bullshit. I guess dark wouldn't be a match for psychic because evil versus Evil will play games with the mind, use dirty tricks.
Trying to mentally manipulate a sociopath.
Oh,
They're
that
so
works too.
detached and cruel that like mental tricks just don't really work on them. It's like you put them in a nightmare and they're like thrilled. Fairy is immune to dragon.
Dragon D's nut. I'm sorry. I guess in fairy tales, the fairy never really gets touched by the dragon. But like I said, I don't really think about fairy tales when I think about fairies. I think about the fae and their creepy ass shit.
Think about Shrek. The dragon could do nothing in the face of true love. Although actually, that doesn't like totally work because it actually helped
Bow chicka wow wow.
save the wedding at the end of the movie, and then finds love herself with Donkey. So, it's something else. More logically, fairy magic in myths simply casts a wider net. Dragons are strong, but they can't defeat all the other mystical creatures combined. I'm pretty sure. Again, this one's a little funky. They really just needed to nerf dragons. Like,
yeah.
Just remember that. Flying is immune.
Okay, they didn't just need to nerf dragons. They also needed to nerf the dark type because of two Pokemon who would not have a weakness outside of special conditions like changing their type or foresight. Fucking dark types.
Immune to ground. If you are not touching the ground,
you're not affected by flying.
Earthquake. Ghost and normal are immune to...
Alright, this is gonna be an interesting one because there's also a Pokemon theory based upon it. So they say that Gengar is Clefairy's shadow. And I'll throw them up on the screen. Yeah, if you see it, they are very similar. You can easily see how one can be a shadow to the other. There's also other things beyond it about similar, how Gengar doesn't weigh anything, similar sizes. But yeah, you can't fight your own shadow, and your shadow can't fight you.
To each other. Living people cannot touch ghosts, and ghosts cannot touch living people. Ghost is also immune to fighting due to this phase-through thing that they do.
And no matter how good you're at martial arts, you're not going to fight a ghost. But it won't stop me from trying!
But fighting is not immune to ghost, because fighting describes the technique, not the body. So a normal person can't touch or be touched by a ghost, and a punch would go through a ghost, but like you can't really say that a ghost can't touch Kung Fu. Because Kung Fu is like, it's actions, not like a thing.
Motherfucker, I'll touch it with gun fu.
Due to the electrical grounding discussed earlier.
Alright, I didn't have time to stop that, but yeah.
The earth could not care
Kinda
less.
obvious.
Finally, steel is
You can't really poison steel. Well, you can't poison a rock either. Or fire. Why is steel the exception?
immune to poison. This one's a little weird because I could just say, yeah, of course, because, like, you can't poison metal. But you also...
No, here's the weirder part. A lot of metals are poison. Like mercury, plutonium, uranium, lead. So, I guess in the sense that they can poison you, they can't be poisoned themselves.
You can't really poison a stone or ice either, and those still take damage from poison, so we need another explanation. That better explanation is that toxic waste is usually stored in metal vessels
that works too.
Penetrate nor harm. Sometimes the barrels are plastic, but there's no plastic tank. And now for the final
Not yet.
section, resistances.
Oh god, this is gonna be a headache and a half.
And unusual. Resistances are not just weaknesses inverted. They're way less consistent. In fact, the only type to resist every type it's super effective against, and no others, is flying. And it has the ground immunity tacked on. But most are weird, like water. It resists fire, which makes...
Okay, yeah. If water puts out fire...
sense, but not ground or rock. The others it resists are steel, ice, and itself.
Why was water... I mean, yeah, you can't... Water resists water, it should be immune, but water resists water because you can't get water wet. It's a state of being. Ice is just frozen water, so if you throw it in water, it's not going to freeze it, but it will eventually melt the ice. If we're talking about steel as in stainless steel, then water can't do anything to stainless steel.
None of which it's strong against. So rather than try to logically explain the reasoning behind
Motherfucker, I will logic the hell out of this.
Because even when logic fits, it's loose and inconsistent, I'm going to give you some tricks to remember as many resistances as possible. It's not going to be perfect, because I'm a Pokemon...
Alright, I'm not going to go into the... try and break down every resistance, because that would be too long, because there's so many fucking resistances. So, I'll just try to throw my 2 cents in where I see fit.
I'm a YouTuber for a living, and I still sometimes forget them, but I will do the very best I can. Normal is the easiest. It completely lacks resistances, and is the only type to do so. Remember its weakness to fighting and immunity to ghost, and you're set. That's the type with the least resistances. Then the most is steel. Just remember it resists everything except the 3 types it's weak to, poison, since it's immune, plus water, electric, dark, and ghost. Wedge. Just think about like a steel wedge. Driven something, I don't know. I remember water and...
Alright, water, electric... Fuck, what were the only 2? I hate steel because I can't ever. Dark and ghost. Alright. So water doesn't really do anything to metal, so that's why it doesn't resist it. Electricity goes through metal, so that's why it does not resist electricity. Dark does not affect... a metal in the dark is still going to be metal, so it's not going to affect that. And ghosts aren't really going to do anything to a metal beam. So just remember, so I guess that's one way to remember it.
Electric, because they feel like they could be super effective against steel. Water for rust, and electric since metal conducts electricity. But steel ever resistant limited those matchups to just neutral. Then for dark and ghost, I just think of a sad Metagross. He got sad in Gen 6. When steel lost its resistance.
Oh, yeah.
Ghost, it used to.
Oh, that's how it's in 5.
Thus he gained 2 new weaknesses. Hey, look at him all, he's so bummed. Back to the other end of the spectrum, ice has the second fewest resistances, infamously only resisting
Regrettably, ice type sucks.
itself. Ice, Crybaby. This is actually a
great
opportunity to discuss
Don't make fun of Cryagonal, I love him.
all of the types that resist themselves, because it is impossible to explain logically. I could say ice resists ice, because ice against ice is just more ice. And then I could say ground resists ground, because you won't do much by adding dirt to dirt. But there's the problem. Ground doesn't resist ground.
Yeah, Pokemon is weird.
Not resist themselves across the board, so I came up with a fun way to remember which ones do. Resisting oneself is special, as opposed to physical. And also evolutions. This is the list of types whose attacks were always...
Okay, if you're playing Pokemon before Generation 4, because in Generation 4 they made what was called the Physical Special Split. And what that did was it split moves into being physical or special based on the actual move versus based on the actual element. Because before Generation 3, fire, water, grass, electricity, psychic, ice, dragon were all special moves. Fire Punch was a special move. Absorb was special. Thunder Punch, was that a thing? Yeah, I think it was special. That's the weird part. And then Steel, Rock, Ground. Shit, I can't remember. Normal, Ghost. All the ones that weren't that were physical. So, if it's an evolution element, which is why I wish they never made Regidrago, because they just fucked it up. If it was an evolution element, and dragon, it was special in Generation 1 through 3. If it was anything else, then it was physical. I really wish they fucked up the opportunity, and they were on it, that they could have just made a dragon evolution, and then had the special split that way, and then fairy added onto it, because fairy didn't exist back then, and then all the physical types would have been Regis, except for ice. Why do I always forget that ice was freaking special? It just seems physical.
Special before the physical special split in Gen 4, and all of them resist themselves, except Dragon, which is famously
Dragon these nuts!
one of the only 2 types that is weak to itself. This works out great since all of these types match with an evolution except Dragon, because we never got a Dragon evolution.
Regrettably.
There are 2 hang-ups with this though. The first is Sylveon, since Fairy does not resist itself, and
Wait,
also
doesn't?
Poison and Steel are missing. But that actually works out perfectly. The self-resisting types are the evolutions, except Sylveon, who got scared away by its 2 weaknesses. Alternatively, you can use this mnemonic
That
device
is
that I came up with.
genius.
Whenever I feel poo-poo down, everyone subscribe good. It's a bit flawed,
The fuck?
since there are 6 other types who have the same first letters as the words in that. And also, it's kind of painfully terrible, so maybe just do the whole special evolution thing. Let's keep progressing in order from least to most resistances. So next up are the types with 2. Dark is pretty straightforward. It resists itself because of Umbreon, then since it's offensively good against Ghost and Psychic, it's defensively good against them too. Remember that Psychic is an immunity instead of a resistance, because Dark was explicitly created to nerf Psychic. Next is...
Yeah, it's just easier to remember what is immune to it, and I don't know, eventually you get to muscle memory where you know.
Ghost. What helps me remember its resistances and lack thereof
Bug,
is Gengar.
poison.
The only fully evolved ghost type in Kanto is weak to Psychic, because it's a poison type, and Ghost does not resist Psychic. Ghost does resist Bug
and poison.
Just think about the Gengar laughing at a bee drill. It quadruple resists all of the bee's stab moves. Ground is another type with 2 resistances, Poison and Rock. These are 2 of the types it's strong against, and of course it's immune to Electric, but it does not resist the last 2 types it's good against, Steel and Fire. I remember this by thinking of Onix and Steelix. Onix is weak to Steel, and Steelix is weak to Fire, because their ground type does not help them in those matchups. The final type with 2 resistances is Psychic. One is itself, remember, evolution type, Espeon, and the other is Fighting. Fighting is easy to remember since Psychic is good against it, but how do you remember that it doesn't resist Poison? I personally think of Exeggutor being weak to Poison. Psychic powers cannot save it from spoiling coconuts.
Like I said, type resistances are just, you're just gonna have to get to know them. You play enough, you're gonna instinctively know, hey, I should probably not hit this with a fire type move.
Now for the types with 3 resistances. Let's first talk about Bug and Fighting. Since they have a fun fact I always remember, they are the only 2 different types to resist each other.
Oh, yeah.
Other 2 resistances
That's
are
weird.
Grass and Ground. I remember Ground and Fighting too by thinking of Bug's Steel types like Scizor, which is one of the few type combos in the game with only 1 weakness, that being Fire.
And is it quad
weak to fire,
resistant?
fighting, and ground,
Quad
so
weakness.
the Fighting and Ground weaknesses
Wait,
must be
did he say
canceled
2
out
types?
by thinking of Bug's Steel types like Scizor, which is one of the few type combos in the game with only 1 weakness,
Few?
that being Fire.
Oh yeah,
Steel is weak to
Sableye.
fire, fighting, and ground, so the Fighting and Ground weaknesses must be cancelled out by the Bug type. As for Grass, it's the only type Bug is strong against that Bug actually resists. You can remember this with the phrase, "I'm gonna tick your grass." It is incredibly stupid, but hopefully so stupid that it
I feel like I
ticks
should be
with
offended.
you.
Should I be offended?
Fighting's other 2 resistances are Dark and Rock. Just picture a karate master listening to hardcore death metal and just really not enjoying it. Fairy resists fighting, dark, and bug. Conveniently, it has good defensive matchups against all three of the types it's good against. Fighting, dark, and dragon. It just has the famous immunity to dragon. It also resists bug because, get this, all four types that start with F resist bug. Because F bugs, I guess. Next is flying, another F type, which, as I already mentioned, is the only type that resists every type it's strong against and no other.
That's strange.
Bug, grass, and fighting. The final type with 3 resistances is electric, resisting itself, as discussed earlier, Jolteon, plus steel and flying. Just think about Skarmory flying into a power line.
Fuck that bird.
The power line will be fine, Skarmory will not be. Then we have 4 types with 4 resistances. The easiest to remember is Dragon. It resists water, electric, fire, and grass. The starter types, excluding Eevee. The starter types that are starter types in like more than one game. I like to think that before Megas, the Dragon type hated Charizard so much, not only was Charizard not allowed to be Dragon types, but Dragon decided to resist Charizard.
They were dragging these nuts across Charizard.
And all of its starter friends.
I will not apologize.
Like secondary types, like the poison type on Venusaur and the flying type on Charizard, but Dragon doesn't resist those. Grass resists itself. God, that is hard to say. Resists itself. Electric, water, and ground. First is itself because of Leafeon, the whole thing I discussed earlier. And then its electric resistance is actually one of the few that I think works perfectly logically. The reason is that wood is a poor conductor of electricity. Sure, lightning strikes can start wildfires, but that's proof of wood's poor conductivity. The energy can't go anywhere else, so it lights the tree on fire. As for water and ground, rather than explain those, I find it easier to explain why grass does not resist rock, the only type it's strong against that it doesn't resist. Think of a stone axe in Minecraft. It can cut down trees, just not for very long before it breaks. So that balances out as a neutral matchup. Rock resists normal, poison, fire, and flying. You can remember poison and normal by thinking about how both are bad against the physically hardest types, rock and steel. Then you have fire and flying, both weak to rock, but not bug and ice. The other 2 types rock is strong against. For this, I find it helpful to think like a Gen 1er. Gen 1 rocks. Gen 1 has iconic normal types like Snorlax and Meowth, an excessive number of poison types, and most famously, Charizard. But it does not have a bug-ice type, since we didn't get that type combo until Snom in Gen 8. Next is Water, which, as I mentioned at the start of this section, is kind of funky. It has itself, remember Vaporeon, but also Fire, Ice.
We don't talk about like Vaporeon.
And Steel. Fire is the only one it resists of the 3 that it's strong against, and I remember this because of Gyarados and Empoleon. Gyarados is weak to rock because of its flying type, and Empoleon is weak to ground because of its steel type. Their water type does not save them. For steel, I think of a sword stabbing water. It doesn't do anything. As for ice, when you make a glass of ice water, the water just gets chilly, but the ice melts. Admittedly, this particular matchup is quantity focused, because if you pour a glass of water out on an iceberg, that water's gonna freeze. However, how often are you on an iceberg? At least compared to how often you have a glass of ice water. Poison is the only type with 5 resistances, which is more than I realized. It resists itself, remember scaring off Sylveon, plus grass, fairy, fighting, and bug. Grass and fairy are the only 2 types it's strong against, so that's helpfully easy. Then for bug and fighting, remember how they resist each other? Well, think of that as a toxic relationship. Thus, poison resists both of them. Again, I know this is very stupid, but that's kind of the point. Then finally, fire type, with 6 resistances, second place behind steel, which is still 4 behind because steel resists 10, and then steel also has the immunity. Steel's insane. Fire resists every type it's strong against: bug, steel, grass, and ice. Here I think it could be helpful to think about all of the types that have a perfect defensive matchup against every type they're strong against. So, in other words, The types that either resist or are immune to every type that they have a super effective matchup against. Those types are Dark, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Poison, and Steel. It's the 3 types added after Gen 1, and then a Charizard who caught a cold. In addition to those 4, Fire resists itself, remember Flareon, plus Fairy, which I've never fully understood, but
Yeah,
I have
that
a
was
great way
weird.
to remember it. Pretend for a moment that your name is Fire. It's the first day of school and your teacher is taking attendance in class, and then she mispronounces your name so badly that she says, "Is Fiery present?" You'd be so offended that you'd be resistant to answering. Alright, this one's probably the worst of all of them.
What's a fairy? Okay, whatever. What's a fairy gonna do to a flame?
But hey, so bad that it hopefully sticks with you forever. That's gonna wrap it up. If you want to see
Alright, yeah. I don't blame her for not trying to freaking, justify resistances because, oh god, I forgot some of those resistances existed. But yeah, if you're just a normal, casual player, you play the games to beat them and collect the Pokemon, you're gonna be good with just knowing the type, weaknesses. Because truthfully, you get you get a Pokemon with 4 different type attacks, max out its attack, 6 different ones, that's 24 attacks, so that's gonna be 8. You're gonna have, fuck, math, 6 moves doubling up, or having them as utility. But essentially, you're just gonna be attacking as hard as you can, just burn through it. Over level, you'll be fine. You'll get through the game. If you're going VGC, you're probably gonna have the type chart memorized, so you can combat pretty much anything. But oh god, there's still 4 more. Nope, there's 10 more seconds. Thumbs up if you liked the video. Thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe to see more, and I'll see you guys next time. Jesus Christ, it was 45 minutes.